Oh no.
Yeah, that's all right.
It's weird. It is weird to have the life decision.
Well, let me, I spoken at strange situations. I never spoke after a play, so pretty interesting. The depictions of, if you have any intimacy with addiction or alcoholism, and if you don't, it doesn't matter, yeah? Because what an alcoholic or an addict is, in a very base level, is someone with extreme self-centeredness. Yeah? So let's say if you just have a tendency of being jealous, and then you're an addict, you'll be up on stalking charges in a few months. Yeah? It will amplify certain qualities and actually limit or dampen other qualities like inclusiveness and compassion and empathy. They'll go out, but being right, vindictiveness and stuff like that will be amplified. So alcoholism and addiction sort of fixes upon the self-centeredness that we all are saddled with in a way. And an alcoholic and addict is like an extreme version of it, really. So it's much more, it's sort of like a normal person. Self-centeredness would be like an acoustic version, and with alcoholism or addiction, it's like an electric version, like a lot of long solos, a lot of fucking drunk, yeah, it's a lot of inagata-vidas for long periods of time. So it's just an amplification, extreme amplification. And I got involved in AA in 1988. I was struck sober. I had spent a lot of time, 2 years and 3 months in programs to try to rehabilitate my behavior. A lot of time in jails, and I got run over twice in one night by the same car, which is hard to do. Even if you planned it, it would be difficult to do. So when I was young, as soon as I started to drink, I found I had magnetic appeal to people in uniform. Yeah, I attracted consequences, and from my whole life until I got sober, authorities intervened in my life, because the type of alcoholic I was and an addict I was, and probably still am, was I was willing to pay any consequence tomorrow not to feel uncomfortable now. Yeah, I could give a shit what was going to happen to me. The need to get out of me was so paramount, I would do almost anything. Yeah. So March 21st, 1988, I was at the end of my rope, so to speak, and for the last few months of this run I had been on, I was facing what a lot of people like me face. They don't have any money, yeah? So they can't do what they want to do. So they have to convince others to do what they want to do. And my batting average was going way down. My success rate wasn't too good. And I was really fucking pissed, really. So I used to drink basically to stay obliviated is the word? to stay out of it until I could get high, with the hopes of getting high. So I ended up in a trailer park, and I sort of came to in a situation, and I was with a guy who I didn't know, and he was sitting across the table, and we were passing a bottle of Royal Gate vodka, and I looked at him, he had a big head, a bulbous nose, and varicose veins on his face, and I said to myself, this guy's a bum. And then suddenly I looked at him, and I thought he was looking at me like I was a bum. And everything crashed in on me at that second. Things happened that I didn't know could happen. First of all, that stream of thought stopped. And then suddenly there was a download. And in AA we talk about there's an admittance to your innermost self. So your innermost self is not in the mind, it's not a thought, yeah? I don't know what it is, but I know what it ain't, yeah? So something downloaded, and it was like a CNN news flash, just a headline, and the headline was, I'm fucked, basically, yeah? Now, people knew that I'd been fucked for quite a while, but it was like news to me, really. It was very surprising and very deflating, incredibly deflating. But then suddenly all these new thoughts started rolling in my head that I hadn't thought of a minute before, and the first thing I thought was, I better go and call the program I had just left 10 months before, a place called Delancey Street, and see if they would take me back in. And so I walked to the phone booth and I made a call, and I asked Delancey Street if I could come back, and they had been getting my newsletters since I left. And they said, no, you can't come back. You can come back in a month for another interview, like the thing they did tonight with Cecil, yeah? And maybe we'll take you, maybe we won't. So I started, the first honest thing I'd said in 10 months, I said to them over the phone, which is, I don't think I have a month, you know? So what occurred was, I was struck sober without even knowing it, yeah? The trip was, as they picture it, the demons and stuff like that are very, very strong. Even if they take a major blow, they regroup. Sort of like if you break a thermometer and the mercury separates, it regroups. Yeah, this is sort of what it is. It's a very, very stubborn parasitical movement. Yeah, so it got shocked by this moment of clarity, but it regrouped and it started talking to me as me. And then when the lady got, I asked a woman that if she would help me. She decided to. She drove an hour and a half, and in that hour and a half, I had a miraculous, you know, addictive resurrection. I wanted to get loaded again. So then I get in her car with the idea that I'm humble and I'm done, but I'm thinking, you know, so I try to talk her into buying some Coke, you know, getting a six-pack of Talls. We'll rent the hotel room, get the dirty magazines. And she had followed that equation many times with me, hadn't been that satisfying for her. So she said, no, we're not going to do that this time. And she said, do you want a place to stay tonight? And that's what I wanted. And she said, you got to go to a recovery meeting. So she brought me to AA that night, a men's meeting on Valencia and Army, now it's Cesar Chavez, and a Salvation Army. And I've been sober and clean ever since, yeah? So I was struck sober, and it stunned that parasite, but that sobriety would have been gone in 2 or 3 days unless I was introduced to a way of life, yeah? A way of life. The addict of my type isn't gonna be okay after 3 days. I need to have my life rearranged. I need to be introduced through suggestions, new principles, new northern stars that I can follow in my life. And so I was struck sober, and then that power that struck me sober introduced me to recovery the next day, and I've been going 31 years to stay sober. Yeah, and to me, the recovery really is about not starting drinking. It's not about stopping drinking, it's not starting. Yeah. So why is it that now I don't start drinking? Because that parasite, or those demons as they were presented tonight, need a certain pH in a certain way. They need a certain environment to grow and fester. Yeah? If that environment changes through a spiritual awakening, as we say in the program, if that pH changes, it's not hospitable to the parasite any longer. And now you've introduced, it's sort of like the parasite is a little dog masquerading as a big dog. If you introduce the big dog, the little dog rolls over. Yeah? So we call the big dog in AA a higher power. And it's really just because what I've noticed, just like in your thing, what this parasite or this lower power respects is a higher power. Yeah. And in a way, I feel most of us who are in active addiction have been taken over by this parasitical movement. I use it almost just as imagery, really, because if the alcoholism presents itself as you in your thoughts, you have to see it as other. If not, you're going to try to be free as it, when the freedom is from the bondage of self. It's not freedom as self, it's freedom from self. Yeah? So the problem resides in the mind. The disease talks to you as you, basically. And when you meet it, which you will many times, you call it me. That's the dilemma. So the way the play presented it, See, you may have that momentary relief, but there's got to be a change in the pH. There's got to be a change sort of in the soil, so to speak. Yeah. So if you look at an example of rose bush, and a rose bush hasn't bloomed in a long time, and the rose bush had self-centeredness, it could start blaming itself. Why am I not fucking blooming? I'm the only one that doesn't bloom. And especially seeing rose bushes that do bloom. Oh, fuck you, rose bushes that bloom. Da 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 da. Yeah, and so it go on, thinking it's all about it, that it's something's faulty with it. But if you just took it out of that lousy soil and put it in a bigger pot and gave it some light and put some water on it, it's gonna fucking bloom. Yeah? This is the whole situation. Right now, in active addiction, alcoholism, you're taken over by something. You are. And it's using us for transportation. And in this world, it can masquerade in plain sight because no one sees it. Yeah? You're gonna be the recipient of all the consequences. Yeah? You're gonna go to jail. It's not. You're gonna be convicted. It's not. It isn't. And it just feeds on you, and it can go dormant like the cicada. Cicada's a fucking bug that goes dormant for 12 years and then comes up. This thing can go 12 years, 12 minutes, it can go dormant. It can suspend itself constantly, but it's not gone. It's just waiting for the right conditions, and as you were saying in the play, its right condition is fuck it. Yeah? It wants us to be at the point of fuck it. And when it has us there, it suggests things, just like pulling the trigger in the thing or doing this and doing that. You wouldn't follow that suggestion about 8 hours before or a week before or if the conditions were different. But because the conditions are right, the fuck it is just the final little shoot. And then suddenly, that which has been contained, the thoughts are here inside, are now outside. The thoughts are now expressing out there. And they're producing consequences, and they're extending themselves through life. Just like this one night, it was Sunday night, January 30th, 1980, in Long Island. Freezing cold evening. I went out, I knew something was wrong in my life. I went to a spiritual group, went to the meeting, didn't feel connected. On the way back where I was staying with my sister, I stopped at a bar where my friend was the bartender. And there was a waitress there, that's all. The friend gave me some shots of Grand Marnier, a Quaalude, I took it. I went back to my sister's house, should have been the end of the evening. It wasn't. The head fucking started getting active. And it started telling me a big party's erupting back at that bar. I'm missing out. I'm missing out on something. I was. It didn't describe it factually. I was missing out on something for sure. So then I get in the car and I drive to that place. And the last thing I remember is the light in the car, boom, close it. I don't know what happened. I come to, I'm horizontal. My nose looks huge. My mouth is the driest I have ever felt it. And I'm looking in the doorway, and my sister-in-law's there. And by the look on her face, I knew I was screwed. And I got run over twice by the same car. I never made it to the bar. Which I heard later, there was still only 2 people there. The fucking waitress and the bartender. So I thought I was going to meet a babe. I met a Chevy Monte Carlo. So I crossed over. The guy hit me. He didn't know what he hit, so he backed up over me. Yeah. So I walked. This is what happens. Yeah. This is what happens to us. And you're not going to kill it. Alcoholics would be fucking so happy if they died early. Most of them are going to go on fucking for years. Look at Haight-Ashbury. I used to live there my first years of AA. I still go back there. The same street people are still living there. You can't kill them. They're like cockroaches. They're fucking drinking every day. They're fucking no diseases. They're so toxified. The parasite is like not going to leave that fucking gold mine. It just keeps feeding off of them, feeding off of them. It wants a life. It's like a parasite in nature. There's a famous one, there's so many of them, but there's a famous a species of mushrooms called cordyceps. Yeah, very trippy. And the mushrooms, just like everything else, its main imperative is to reproduce. But it has a very faulty system of reproduction. Spores on the underlying part of the mushroom. So it has to hope an animal comes by and rubs against it, or the wind is right. So it created a whole greater strategy. Now the spores, right, are released and they land on ants. They go into the ant and they jack into the ant brain and they tell the ant where to go. And as soon as the ant takes them to where the mushroom wants to go, it kills the ant and the mushroom grows right out of its fucking head. You don't think addiction is that like that?
Whoa.
Fucking shit, yeah. That's why it's like a mental parasite. It talks to you as you. You'll die as it and for it, really, to be right. It's insane. So this idea of parasite worked for me because that's what it felt like. And when I go to meetings, I don't identify with who you are. I identify with what's taking you over, because we've all been taken over by the same parasite. There's not millions of parasitic alcoholisms. There's one. Yeah? There's one parasite that takes all the hosts. And it's such an incredible, hostile parasite, it's come up with the greatest strategy. It convinces the host that it's the host. And it's talking to us right now as us in the brain, in the head. The problem resides in the mind. Yeah. And what happened with me, there's a statement for the people in AA. There's a statement in page 64 in this big book. It's a text, yeah. So 164 pages, and it's the text of AA, 12 steps and the importance of surrender and all these things, yeah. And there's a statement, it says, being convinced, and that means to believe with certainty. And a lot of the times, the requirement of the steps is to be convinced first of certain information, and then you go into the step. Yeah? So basically it's like being convinced you're fucked, and then the next possibility. Yeah. All right, so being convinced of what? Of that self, this idea of the parasite or the demons, yeah? Self. Or as Jesus said when he talked to the demon, it said our name is Legion. So the demon can appear in and talk a lot of different ways, yes? So being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, is what has defeated us, yeah? So we're the us, yes? And there's this one, whatever you want to call it, parasite, demon, foreign pathogen, alcoholism, yeah? This one parasite is feeding on all of us, and it's using us for transportation. Now, in our society, we've seen a lot of us, yeah? We've seen a lot of hosts taken over by the parasite. And it's really strange how many of the different hosts will drive to the same 3 parking spaces of institutions, jails, and death. Now, they're all thinking while they're going there that they're special and unique, but they seem to go to the same fucking place. So basically, and the parasite doesn't have an infinite amount of traits, and it doesn't have an infinite amount of demonstrations. It tends to be habitual. So he will take the next alcohol at the same fucking place, the same place, the same place. That's why there's tons of institutions and rehabs and shit like that, because that's where it takes us. Yes? And this recognition, this self-centeredness is so blinding, you can't see the fucking parasite right in front of your eyes. And you keep calling it you. And if you keep calling it you, the only way you can entertain freedom is as it. You're trying to be free as the parasite. It's not going to become a service fucking dog. It's not going to be your friend. It has a nature. It doesn't have a life. It wants what you offer. It wants to express. It wants its fuel. Once it drinks and uses, the fucking genie's out of the bottle. Yeah. So I saw this statement, being convinced that self manifested in various ways. If you're convinced that self is what has defeated us, manifest in various ways, we're now going to look at self's common manifestations. And so the common ones are resentments, fears, as they talked about tonight, right? Fears, resentment, fears, and harms done to others in the pursuit of what you want. Yes? So we do a basic inventory on that. But if you look at it, the manifestations of self, not your manifestations, So something's manifesting through you, sort of like if Stanley was manifesting through me and I'm Paul, and every time Stanley's manifestation came through, I called them mine, I would be in the act of being identified as Stanley. To me, that's the root of alcoholism. It's the act of being identified as the parasite. We're seeing self-manifestations, yet we're calling them ours. Even when we write about them, it's my resentments, my fears. You're fucking pledging allegiance to the problem. You're in the act of being identified as the fucking problem. I didn't come up with this. I got relief. And in the relief, I could see the problem. And the problem is an activity of mental nature, which is, it's something that we're not trying to convince us that we're it. Yes? That's it. So then we go to the store for it. We fucking cop the dope for it. Yeah? We take the fall for it. Yeah. So you're not going to know the problem you're going to know it from the relief. If the relief stabilizes and you experience that the problem does not exist for you, yes, then you're fucking on to something. So this was the diagnosis. I've been sharing it for years, just trying to get something across to my tribe, because if you keep calling what you're not you, it has you. Yeah? If you can see it as foreign, apostasy, this is exactly what happened. As soon as I saw self as foreign, the next possibility was I can be free from it. And so it has become. Yes? I can be free from it. So when I do inventories, I'm not writing down my resentments. I'm writing down manifestations of self in my life, so that by the manifestations, I'll recognize the self. Yeah? You'll know the tree by the fruit. I live by the fruit of the fucking disease, and then I recognize the disease. And the disease is the act of being identified as self. That's the disease. That's the condition that it thrives in. Because it can be doing all this shit in plain sight, and every time you meet it in every little antechamber of your own life, you'll call it me. You'll call it me. You'll have carte blanche. It knows all your fucking hidden secrets. It knows your little weak points. Oh, you're never going to be loved, or you're a loser. Some fucking thing it runs over and over again. Its loops are so finite. It's just that it's gotten fat and lazy because it's already convinced us of it. It's just reinforcing it all day. It's not working hard. It's done it. Yeah. When I did tons of cocaine, I mean tons of cocaine, not one night or day I was on coke did I think I was cocaine. Not one. There was always a clear separation of me from coke. The disease, the addiction of the mental state to self is you're taking yourself to be fucking cocaine. That's how fucking far it is at the beginning point. We're taking ourselves to be that which we're not. We're starting there. The only solution is the introduction of a higher power, basically. Yeah? And we do I could go into it, but basically the steps facilitate a diminishing of the mental condition where the fucking parasite lives, and then something that's always been available, that's always there, becomes obvious to one. So the idea of a higher power of your own understanding moves to a higher power of its own understanding. Why would I want a higher power of my own understanding? And then you see the biggest step of all, the unspoken one, is quit playing God. Quit playing God. Well, listen, I'm telling you, the parasite's playing God. And the parasite hears quit playing God. What does the parasite try to do? It tries to quit playing God. Yeah? When it tries to quit playing God, isn't that playing God? For ad infinitum, self can't get out of self. You see you're not in self. That's the freedom from self. Self cannot be free from self. So that's, whatever. I've actually spoken at halftime in an NFL fucking playoff game in Staten Island. where it was like Eckhart Tolle meets the Sopranos. They had a big shindig and they just wheeled me in for a 20-minute little talk. And then back to the game. You'll know, see if you, whatever, yes. I'm like a free-range alcoholic now, I swear. I swear to God.
So Paul, it seems like that the parasite is not, it has no monopoly just on addicts or alcoholics, but it's kind of run riot right now.
Totally.
Like it's fucking everywhere.
Totally.
We got a culture that worships it, basically.
But see what's beautiful, we're the greatest teachers if other people could see. We're just extreme versions of everyone's stock model, really. We're an extreme version of self, and so the pH is so acidic the parasite can thrive, but it's dormant in everyone, yes. See it. See, when you know someone who's been sober and then they go out, their facial structure changes. Something, the thing behind the mask is different, and you can see it in the mask. I mean, seriously, talk about possession, definitely. But it's not, see, a possession sort of implies in a way that it wasn't there possessing already. Yeah? I don't see it as a possession. I see it as an occupation, really. I don't think the thing goes. I just think it goes underground or is suspended by the maintenance of a spiritual condition, yeah? And the whole idea of what we're passing on in AA is spiritual awakeness, yeah? Not steps. We're talking about the result of the steps is spiritual awakeness, and that's what we're passing on to people. It's through spiritual awakeness, yeah? In other words, waking up to what you are so that you can see what you're not. If you're asleep to what you are, it's easy to take yourself as what you're not. Yeah? But if you get a sense of what you are as spirit, you'll see the mental nature of the parasite. You'll see it. Yeah? So, yeah. That's that. Yeah. We want to go home, I think. So. It's getting late. I remember when I was being interviewed by the police once. They wanted me to introduce one of their friends to my friends. I remember with two guys on both shoulders. Back then we had loyalty though in Long Island. Yeah, whatever. So hey, thanks. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you.
And let's thank Randy on that one.